Hey guys, here about to do a quick demo of the MQ2Node plugin. So what this plugin is an embedded Node.js runtime. And for anyone who doesn't know what Node.js is, it is a runtime that compiles and runs JavaScript. And this can be used for quite a few things. Most people associate this with running servers, but it can be also used for file system operations, network operations, remote and local as well. Pretty much anything you can think of, Node can do on a local computer. So the motivation behind this is to replace and also augment the existing macro language. And I'm just going to get into the existing macro language right now. This is an example of what's what has been the de facto standard for Macroquest for the last however many years. And that's what people use, and it works, and it's not the worst thing in the world. In the meantime, people have tried binding other languages to it. There's a Python extension, a .NET extension, and this was uh, my idea to try this out for JavaScript. So what the plugin does is bind data that is in the client and methods and events and provides it to us in a JavaScript runtime so that we can run something like this, a macro, completely in JavaScript and use the JavaScript flow in the event loop that's provided with the Node.js runtime to be able to construct things a little bit differently with the program flow. If there's any big real difference there, that's probably going to be it. That and the entire system of JavaScript in terms of variables, how they're used with scope and everything else built into the latest, I think this is ES7 or ES8 syntax. Node.js uses the V8 engine. This is the latest node that's built into it, 14.8, which is using V8 version 7. And this stuff might only interest advanced users, but either way, this is intended to be accessible to most anybody who's got an interest in coding and not be completely convoluted. Suffice to say, there are a lot of simple things about it, and there could be potentially a lot of very complicated things about this as well. So I'm just going to go through an example right here. And what I wanted to do as a proof of concept is just write a script that takes our character in Quanos, in North Quanos, or is it Kinos? That's for you to decide. And to have a list of NPCs that we're targeting and to kill them forever. Uh, why not? So I'm going to go over the construction of the script right here, and we're just going to run it and see what happens. So something that I've already constructed here are quite a few utility functions here. Um, the first one is the main function, and now this is the equivalent of what you'd see in a normal macro file, where you just have whatever logic's in here looped over and over and over again. So you just wait for something to happen. And there are some other functions here. There's use debugger. So this is something that can attach a debugger. I'll do this a bit later on to show you exactly why this is useful, when to use it, what we get from doing that. And some of the utility functions like adding a spawn listener. So if there's a spawn event, to be able to react to that and have some code against that. And then just some helper utility functions such as get closest of spawn names, but we'll get into that whenever the script is actually running. So the script by itself isn't that long, less than 100 lines, and I'm going to run it. It's going to start doing something, and we'll kind of go over what's happening as it's going. So the commands are node stop, and node run. And node will load a file. Right here we have a file called Quanos. And I just hit /node before. It gives you a little information about where it's trying to find the macros and the syntax for how to use this. So if I do this and load this file up, all right, it's running our main loop. The first thing it tries to do is find and kill NPCs. And this takes an array, a list of strings. And here's the list of all the NPCs that we're targeting: large rat, decaying skeleton, et al. And we pass it in as a variable here to find and kill NPCs. We find the closest NPC out of that list with our utility function right here. And if there is one, that is, there is a spawn that matches our criteria, then we're going to start doing some work right here. And we might already see this popping up in the chat log over here. We target it, we log out time to die, and we leverage existing commands. This is a big, interesting point of how the JavaScript is still interacting with what we normally understand as how we do things with slash commands. And with Macroquest, that is the implementation of existing plugins. And there could be a million ways to do this, and this is a very brute force and simple example just to start out, because this is still very much in its infant simple stages as well. But for all intents and purposes, we target this NPC, we stick on them, and now here is part of the utilities that I'm writing, that we wait for something to happen. We wait until that target is within a target range of 25 units, whatever that unit is. And we check and see what happens after that. So this could bring back a couple different things right here. Stick result, it's going to be a condition result. And a lot of things could happen while you're waiting for something to happen. You could die, you could zone, the target could despawn, you could switch targets, something like that. And if that's not the case, if we didn't just reach our target, then we just want to start over. And let's go ahead and run that example actually right now. So I'm right in the middle of doing something, finding this decaying skeleton, but I'm going to target this one right here, but something else happened right there, switch targets. So we just go back to the beginning and start over. But if we did reach the target, we're just going to run the MQ2 melee command, kill this right here. Once again, a brute force thing. There could be better ways to do this, but this is just for the sake of example. So we expect this to start engaging our mob and to have something happen. And once again, a lot of things could happen. You could zone, you could die, and we're going to get the result of whatever happens here. And here's a different example of JavaScript syntax. It's available in most programming languages. It's a switch statement. So we're going to switch on that result, and we're going to do something. If the target died, then we're going to update this object that we actually have declared up here. I forgot to mention this, just a kill tracker, which is just an object. And we're going to track the name of that mob plus the number of times that we've killed it. So it's just a little expression to add 1 to an existing kill tracker if we have it for that mob. And then a little log, another one bites the dust, and then we log out this handy built-in function for turning an object into something we can read. So we see the example right up here. And if you've been watching this, then you've probably seen this number rising as well. We expect this for the large rat, when he dies, to come up as 2. Yep, there he goes. And in the case that we zoned or we died, don't really do anything fancy here, just better luck next time, and we just stop. That will completely finish the script right here. So as the final thing I want to do here is just show the debugger and how we would use that. Right now I'm in VS Code, and we can attach to a running debugging port, which is default to 92229. If you're familiar with doing debugging in VS Code, this should just be kind of out of the box, but this would be something that would be kind of assisted if this were something that everybody would want to do. It really depends on who would want to do it and for what reason. So we have a launch command for sticking to this right here, and I'm going to wait till this hits. So right now, down in the program, I'm right around here. It hasn't run back around and done this yet, so I'm going to jump back up here. Bam. There we go. So it just got the closest NPC of all of that right here, and this is an example of how we're binding data to the MQ2 system. So first of all, I'm stopped right here. Nothing else is going to happen. And second of all, we have lots of different information. This was calculated in a previous function, actually, right here and tacked onto that object. But we have lots of different information that we can, we call this like a info on a TLO, top level object, something like that. But this is going to give us all the information that we might want to use for any kind of conditional reason. Say if the name were something, this one's a decaying skeleton 04. Great job. But all the other, nope, he's not AFK. So all the other fields are things we can use in the part of our program flow right here in order to make a decision. Just to go into a little bit of detail right there, let's check out closest of spawn names, the implementation. So this is maybe a little more advanced right here, but we calculate the distance based on all of these names that we're providing. We grab the closest of every single spawn right here, and we compare them to each other, and we bring back the closest out of all of those. So that's how that works right here. It's a little bit of JavaScript utility and leveraging some built-in functionality in the C++, and that all results to something we can use right here, which is the closest NPC, and it happens to be this decaying skeleton. And I can just go ahead and continue this here. And I want to point out a couple other things right here. This has probably been popping up and I haven't really talked about it. So one of the big benefits of running this in the Node.js runtime is concurrency, is to be able to run however many things you want pretty much at the same time. So instead of running line by line by line by line, call something else line by line by line by line, all these are running at the same time right here. So there's a spawn listener that's going to be popping up for something in the background, and that's going to run at the same time as everything else. So got a spawn decaying skeleton, this happened before. And there's also an interval that I set right here, which is 20,000 milliseconds. So every 20 seconds, it's just going to tell me something's happening. I mean, this is a very rudimentary example of something you could implement for a very fast interval and check if a gem is in the zone. There are better ways to do that actually too, but really up to your imagination. So I could have 20 of these doing something at every 15 seconds, every 5 seconds, and seeing what's going on in the game state and reacting to it, and then possibly stopping execution, something happening, pivoting on something else completely. But the options are very broad right here. It's a beginning for a lot of different opportunities. And this isn't meant to replace any existing functionality in plugins. Those are already built in the slash commands. It is meant to be an alternative to the existing macro language. Um, with that being said, you can still run macros inside this. I could run a command that would run a macro at the same time as this is all happening, which will get kind of complicated, but that's it. And yeah, this is at a pretty beginning stage right now, but at the same time is mature enough to kill skeletons for days. It's a pretty simple example, but this could literally go on forever. And the overhead of this running in the background is relatively small as well. And thanks for watching if you made it all the way through. I think this is pretty interesting. JavaScript is a pretty unique language. It's powerful. A lot of people don't like it, but that's their problem. Um, and hopefully I can keep this updated and eventually make this usable for people in the future. And if anybody has any feedback on that, I would love to hear it. Love it or hate it. This is something that I enjoy spending time doing anyway. So hope you enjoy the video. Thanks.